What is up, friends? YouTube and motorcycle enthusiasts accelerate coming at you with a new video on the YZ250FX. Is it a motocross bike? Well, as many of you know, I'm not a motocross rider. I'm barely a trail rider. I'm a new guy just getting out there and riding trails. Now, I haven't made a video for a while. I've been on the road working, and I haven't been riding for about 3 months, and I haven't made a video for 3 months. So whenever I was able to get out and ride, obviously with the challenges that our country's facing with COVID-19 and all the closures that are happening, a lot of the OHV trails that I typically ride, they're just not open yet. They will hopefully open a little bit later in the season. So whenever the opportunity came, there are still a few motocross tracks in my local area that are riding, or that are open to riders. So I met up with my friend Kyle, as many of you know, from Brown Mountain Day 1 video, whenever he came out and rode with Davey and I. You know, Kyle typically rides motocross, so, you know, he invited me out to ride, and I said, absolutely, definitely come out. So I opted to bring the YZ250FX. The beta's has a few things I want to do to it, just catching up on maintenance and stuff, which once again is another reason to have two bikes. So it definitely held true for me on this one. The YZ was good to go. So I took the YZ250FX out, and I have to admit I was a little intimidated, you know, with the thought of getting on the motocross track and doing that type of stuff. Now, the particular track we went to, they also have a local trail loop as well as a nice sand loop. There's no jumps or anything in their sand loop, which I had a lot of fun doing. I had a lot of fun riding the trails as well, and I ultimately ended up going on the track. So for me, as many of you know, I'm a new rider. You know, I've only been riding off-road coming up on a year. It'll be a year in May as an adult, right? So I have my KTM, which I wanted to dual sport. And then I ultimately transitioned to, you know, going full off-road with the beta. So and that's where I've been. So one season under my belt, realistically, riding off-road, and I gotta say that. You know, being at the motocross track and seeing so much talent out there, you know, young and older guys alike, even, you know, just it was a good time. But you know, so many good riders and people that really just have a lot of the skills that I want to possess. And it's not just that I want, you know, I'm not saying I want to become a motocross rider, but I do see that these guys, the way they control the bike and they can predict in their body position and their movement, it really is impressive. And motocross is a facet of that. You know, there's a lot of hard enduro and GNCC off-road professionals that come from motocross. They have that background doing motocross in their youth, and then they transition vice versa. You know, trials and a few other aspects of riding. But yeah, I was really impressed with the YZ250FX, and I have to admit I was a little bit impressed with myself for not riding for 3 months. You know, the first thing we did was get out there on the trails, and again, there was trails here, so great place to warm up, to get the knock out the arm pump, which was pretty severe most of the day, for sure, for not riding, and I typically have issues with arm pump anyway. But the woods were nice, they were good, and the sand track was really fantastic. I had a great time. You know, a lot of the skills that I need to develop, I think going out to the motocross track it's helping me. You know, obviously I'm knocking the rust off of what little skill I had before, but you know, two of the main things that I know I need to work on is, number one is you know, having confidence in turns and having confidence in my front tire. You know, actually weighting the bike and weighting the front end That's a big thing for me. I typically ride slow because I'm new, and as I speed up, not fixating on target fixation, obviously, looking ahead, but actually being able to hit a turn and feel the confidence in the bike, which the YZ250FX is fantastic at. The bike handles really, really well, and I have Dunlop Geomaxes on it. I think they're the tires that come with it, and they did really well. They continue to do well. I do plan to switch up the tires eventually as they're starting to, as they get more hours on them, they're starting to get a little worn. But yeah, that practicing that front end, confidence and being able to push through the turn, that's definitely something that I'm not comfortable with, but I started to get more comfortable with, which ultimately leads to body position, and that's another thing that I've had issues with. I think I've mentioned it in some of my other videos, is I feel like my legs are always tired. And there was later down here, whenever we were in the sand track, or the sand circle track, Kyle was behind me. We were using the Cena headsets, and we were able to talk back and forth, and he critiqued me as he followed me on his KTM 350. And he was reminding me of things that I think I'm doing, but whenever you actually have someone watching you, what we think we're doing, what we're actually doing is sometimes two different things. And one of those things is, crouching down instead of that attack position, keeping my legs a little straighter, but ready to absorb those bumps. And that's why my legs are always gassing out, because I feel like whenever I stand up and extend in the attack position, that I'm really high on the bike. I always want to get down lower. So things like that, it was really good to work on that. And I actually made it on the motocross ride. I made it the entire day without crashing, which was pretty impressive for me, because I usually crash at least once a day or more. And then after not being able to ride for 3 months, and then and then getting out and doing something with riding in the woods and riding on the motocross track, and definitely getting outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
Speeding up. I haven't really opened up my bikes a lot. I don't ride fast, so I'm typically more, I like slower stuff just because I'm slow, and I like more technical terrain off road. But this type of stuff, the trails were great. There were, in the very beginning portion that you just saw, there's some roots and stuff, and I could push a little bit, but it was definitely a slower pace to practice like my stand up and stuff. So that was really good. As for the bike, why I'm really, it's not just about me, it's obviously the bike. Is the YZ250FX a motocross bike? Well, I'm not a motocross rider, and I guarantee you that if somebody that had a lot of skill rode my bike on the track, they could probably do way more and go way faster and jump it and things like that. But as for my bike, the YZ250FX, obviously it's not a motocross bike. That's why there's a YZ250F. However, I will say that one thing that I noticed is the suspension really works well. It does like to go fast. As I was pushing it, I did feel a lot of confidence again in that front end, and I started getting more confidence. And the reason why is because of the Yamaha YZ250FX. The KYB forks, fantastic. The chassis, the way the bike handled under me, the front end felt really stable, and it really was point and shoot. It felt really good. One of the sessions we took as we were taking a break, I was talking to Kyle. I felt like my rear end was hopping up a little bit, and so we backed off the rebound 2 clicks, and that made a tremendous difference on the rear shock, and that way it was much more settled. And I'm still playing with the clickers. I think that's one of the challenges too, whenever you're new and you have 1 season under your belt like I do. I don't really know what changes to make, so obviously I watch YouTube videos and I read forums and learn about suspension and things like that. So I don't really know enough, or I don't push the bike enough usually to really know what works and what doesn't. So that was really cool. I did totally tell a difference from backing off my rebound a little bit and feeling the rear end, like whenever I was going through some of the whoops and some of the more those hard hits, the faster bumps. As I was going through that stuff, once I backed off the rebound 2 clicks, made a total difference. I could definitely feel that it was more stable. So, the bike is fantastic. I have absolutely no complaints with the YZ250FX. Obviously, it's not a motocross bike, but for me, for that day, you guys will see I'm rolling the hills. I'm not really jumping it. I did catch a little air after I was getting more comfortable with a couple places, but there's some pretty big jumps on this track, and obviously in the turns, I would target fixate on some of the ruts, and I would try to get out of the rut, and then I would just end up pushing the outside. I rode the CD class, of course, all day, which probably should have been out there with the kids, but frankly, it was a little intimidating at first, as mentioned, but at the end of the day, I had fun. Do I think that the YZ250FX could be a motocross bike as well as an off-road trail bike? I do. I think, obviously with motocross, the suspension is really the big thing, right? As you get faster and faster and you're able to hit jumps, that's one of the big differences really is is that suspension. Obviously the FX has a wider gear ratio, 6-speed, and the 18-inch rear. I think that's not as big a deal as it is as you will find the limits of the suspension much sooner, to where for off-road racing and riding in general, is that a little bit more plush, especially in the initial portion of the stroke. But I'll tell you, I'm over. My bike is pretty undersprung for me. Right now I'm a little heavy. I'm 215 pounds without gear, which obviously I'm wearing less gear when I'm not riding on. Whenever I was riding today, because I wasn't wearing my backpack with water and all that stuff. I was riding relatively lighter, so just my boots and my knee braces, and then regular jersey and helmet, and gloves. That's pretty much it. So very impressed with the bike. I think that someone, if they, for me, whenever I will go back to the motocross track, just because I did have fun and it is relatively close. So do I think someone could use the FX for kind of a dual purpose motocross and trails and off-road? Absolutely. I absolutely think you could. I think the key would be getting the bike sprung the right way, and then just kind of finding that balance. Just like when Kyle rode his KX450 at Brown Mountain, he softened it up with the clickers, even though the bike is valved and sprung to perform on the motocross track. He did great. Obviously, he had no issues. This is just a little stiff. I think as you play with that type of stuff back and forth, with depending on what you're riding, I think there would be a happy medium there. So once again, the YZ250FX, it's a way better bike than I am a rider, and maybe one day I'll get to the point to where I can really push it. But it was great to get out there on 2 wheels. It was great to enjoy the day. It was it's not being able to ride for 3 months. It really does make you appreciate the simple things in life, which is this hobby that we enjoy. To get outside and to have a good time. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you guys get out there on 2 wheels. Don't let this COVID stuff get you down. I know, social distancing and all the stuff that's going on right now. Riding dirt bikes is fantastic outdoor activity for exercise with social distancing. So hope you guys be safe out there. Stay on 2 wheels, tire side down. This is Accelerate once again, signing off.